Well, welcome to this week's Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Safety at work is more than freedom from physical injury. To be safe, you have to feel safe. Join us each week as we discuss psychologically healthy and safe work in the USA. More than a third of the U.S. population live somewhere where they are lacking mental health workers. Residents of underserved areas often have all kinds of other challenges in addition to their need for mental health. But this actually places about a quarter of the population of the country in a situation where they aren't getting the services that they actually need. So more than 150 million people live in areas where there are professional services available, but they're very, very thin. As a matter of fact, there is one source that suggests that the shortage will increase over the next few years to somewhere between almost 15,000 or as many as 30,000 psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. So today, our guest is someone who's filling that gap in a small city in suburban Atlanta. Dr. Tara Miller, PhD, is a licensed professional counselor, again, in this small town, but a big city at the same time, again, south of Atlanta, where she also serves as a business owner and interestingly serves her community in a couple of other areas as a member of the elected council and also has a nonprofit. She's doing a lot. And we're going to be chatting over these next few minutes or so about what's going on. So I bring people into this podcast with a very simple but interesting question. And for you, who is Dr. Tara Miller?
I'm a servant. I mean, that is my answer. When people ask, who am I or what do? I serve my community. So if it's in the capacity of a councilwoman, if it's in the capacity of a business owner, a nonprofit leader, that is what I do. I serve. If it's a capacity of licensed professional counselor, yes, in the middle of the day or in the middle of the night, she serves. So that's who I am.
Okay. We're gonna try to peel back the onion on some of those.
You got to ask the right questions then. I want to ask questions. And I'm also animated. Let's not forget that I'm animated.
That's good. That's good. So okay. Folks, when they're tuning into this podcast, some listen, others tune in and watch this on YouTube. We're going to try to help them both out with some good information. So when I mention the phrase psychological health and safety, what does that mean to you when you hear a phrase or words like that?
When I think about psychological health and safety, to me, that's creating a workspace that I feel as if I'm mentally healthy, physically comfortable, and I'm in a good space. So you know how people say, I want to create a good space for my mind. I need to also create a good space for my mind to be in. So that's what that sounds like. And that's what it looks like to me, because I like to paint a picture. So the same way that you want your mind and your body to be healthy, you want your space for that to be healthy as well.
So why does one become a licensed professional counselor? What leads a person to do that?
To be honest, a lot of times when you graduate or I don't, first of all, let's be clear. I never chose this. I did not choose this because I thought to myself, girl, you're going to go to college and make millions off the rip. You're just going to go and you're going to be wealthy. And then life happens to where, in college, they tell you, let's take these electives. Let's see what's on the other side of these things. And that's what happened. When you start to really explore and dissect the mind and identify how things operate and work, that's when things start to change for you. When you understand that an individual didn't choose certain circumstances, sometimes the circumstances chose them. That's when you start to make changes. Well, wait a minute. I need to look at this more closely. Like, why did you take the left turn when it said danger ahead? Was it, were you just classically conditioned to go towards the danger? Or what happened? So, in a nutshell, that triggered some things. Like I knew that I had to explore that a little bit further, because sometimes when we know the stove is hot and we just want to touch it to see how hot it is, I no, it's a flame. Don't touch. But some of us do. So just that dissecting of the mind. Some people do brain surgery. I just do mind surgery.
Okay. So again, you weren't sitting at home as a kid going, someday I want to be a counselor. So what is it that you did go to college for? What is it? Yeah. What did you do? What were you trying to do initially?
Business and marketing.
Oh, okay.
Even right down to going to grad school, I said, I'm going to go, even after I got the degree in sociology, I said, I'm going to go to grad school for marketing. I don't want to do that. And it kept tugging at me and tugging at me. And I was like, okay, God, I can hear you. I'm trying. Is that really you telling me to go? Or, okay, I'm going to go.
Okay.
So it was
Okay.
one of those situations. No, I did not want this at first. I think it was really, I went to Georgia State. So Georgia State is in the heart of downtown Atlanta. So you see a lot of different personalities and a lot of different levels of homelessness. And that really got me to desiring to just better understand, like, how did you get here? Why are you here? How did what help was available for you to seek? Did you know that there was help available?
Mm.
So that part. Excuse me.
The statement you just made about help available, I think, is curious, particularly given the circumstances that I mentioned in the opening about so many places in the country who don't necessarily have that kind of access and don't have that kind of resources. So tell us a little bit about about the community that you live in, but whatever part you'd like to share, because I understand that you're a native.
I am. And the interesting thing about being a native, and because we are in the Bible Belt, um, people don't always consider my type of services that they want to partake in. So, and what I mean by that is we feel like audiences, okay, certain audiences may not agree with me, but sometimes we feel like we can take it to God in prayer and leave it there.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, what about, there are only so many chapters that a pastor may be able to peel back for you. So what are we going to do after they've done the best that they can? Because we of course, if we could pray about it and leave it there, let's be clear, you wouldn't even have gone to your pastor. You would have just prayed about it and been finished.
Right.
So um, being here in a smaller community, I've tried to just be a teacher to let them know, like, listen, we're here. You don't have to come tell us everything. Whatever you tell us is what we're going to believe. And so that's the biggest component. Like, you don't have to share with us your life story. Because I am a native, I pretty much already know your life story. But I can only talk about what you choose to tell.
Right.
So it's really just breaking down those barriers, helping people understand I'm here. If you need me, call me and we can talk about it. If there's an issue, let's identify the solution and move forward. But a lot of times people are just fearful of moving forward because some are fearful of success.
Mm. Mm. And I also understand that your community is similar. As a matter of fact, your community in general, there aren't a lot of counseling services, A, available, and B, if they are available, aren't available to everyone. So could you share a little bit more about, at least your perspective on that situation?
Okay, let's go back, because there's one thing about counseling being available, and then there's counseling being available post-pandemic or pandemic. Okay.
Okay.
Um, before COVID, you had clinicians, and then you had people who didn't always feel that it was a necessity. When you had individuals who were in the house feeling as if they were locked up, that's when people started to really identify with mental health a little bit more. Like, what am I feeling? What is this jittery feeling that I'm feeling? What is
Mm,
this out of the blue sweat? And I'm not
mm,
going through any hormonal imbalance.
mm,
So that's when the mental health stigma began to transition, because people were actually able to identify, oh, this is depression.
mm.
This is what anxiety looks like. Yes. But what they didn't think about is clinicians were also experiencing the same thing.
Wow.
So while we're trying to help and be a blessing, a lot of clinicians were also experiencing burnout. So the people who were already on the verge of perhaps saying, I want to retire, they've gone ahead and retired. So now you have even fewer clinicians that are available, but you have a greater need for mental health. And so in the state of Georgia, at least, well, you have different organizations who try to combine where they have reciprocity of states. So if I have a license in Georgia, I provide reciprocity services to different states, and that went into effect in July. But in an attempt to resolve some of the shortage of mental health clinicians.
Not so much. It didn't quite work.
No, because people think that it's work, but I'm like, in attempting to reach more people, you have even more clinicians that are retiring and just all this and taking a break.
Wow.
And so I was speaking to a colleague on yesterday, and she said, she was like, Tara, I don't want to do this right now. She said, I think I prefer to just teach a little while. And I said, what happened? She said, I'm having compassion fatigue.
Hmm.
And I said, I was like, I can understand that. I said, because what happens is that when you have compassion fatigue, when they, how some people tend to think, well, depression looks like this or anxiety looks like this. When you have compassion fatigue or really and truly burnout, you begin to give repetitive scripts, and everybody is different.
Mm,
So it's important that you identify that you have compassion fatigue in order for you not to be a cookie cutter therapist, because you can't be a cookie cutter therapist and no problem is the same.
mm.
So, but anyway, that's me going off on my tangent. Come on, bring it
Oh,
back.
that's quite okay, because that I can't say that I'd ever heard of compassion fatigue, but when you describe it, it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect that there are lots of folks in what we would consider helping professions who end up with compassion fatigue, or even people in families who probably end up with compassion fatigue because they end up taking care of everybody in the family because of their whatever, their education, their job, their status in the family. I'm a firstborn, and sometimes people firstborn kind of feel like that, they have to kind of take care of everybody. Compassion fatigue is, I think, something I'll have to put in the library to remember. I often, when I have these conversations around psychological health and safety, I approach it from an occupational safety and health perspective, because that's kind of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I see in most workplaces and people that I interact with that there's this focus on physical injuries. Did they hurt their back? Did they hurt their knee? Are the joints okay? Is our heart ticking well? Are they working out? They focus on that and don't seem to pay much attention to the emotional, psychological, and mental kinds of stressors and injuries that people get at the workplace. So can you, you uh, for those who can't see, it's your face that says the
It's on
story.
my face. I can't help it. Okay.
So
Okay.
talk more about that focus that particularly businesses and workplaces have on the physical stuff, and they kind of forget about the mental stuff. What's your view and perspective on that?
Of course, being in mental health, I have to take like the importance of mental health days. The importance, every January we start to create these New Year's resolutions for your body, but you never think about how to create a business workplace resolution for your mental health. So I think that it's important for us to really sit down and identify but first of all, before the end of the year, how can we improve the mental state of our work environment, the psychological state of our occupational environment? like you said, occupational safety. I can't remember the country that's starting to examine having a 4-day work week, but that's something that really needs to be identified, because what would be the difference of me saving you a drive in a day, or maybe that Friday or that Monday that you would normally work, you sit at home and enjoy either peace and solitude and get your mind back refocused, or do your laundry that you haven't done in a month.
Hmm.
Those small tasks add to healthy mental health and occupational just therapy outcome, mental health, quality of life. If I can stay 2 extra hours or come in 1 hour early and stay 1 hour late instead of coming in for a whole extra day, I would do that.
Hmm.
And the impact that it'll have on my overall well-being, even if I only worked out 3 days a week because I'm off.
Hmm. Wow. Wow.
So, I mean, it's stuff like that we as organizations can do to modify the total quality of the person. So mental health days are important. A 4-day work day is important. Um, what can I like? First of all, being open enough to say that who created 5-day work weeks and told us that it was the best thing ever? Like who? We have to we have to understand that trends that work for certain companies don't work for every company, and it certainly does not work for my quality of health, physical or mental.
Hmm.
So I have to I have to look at what works best for the individuals that I service,
Hmm.
not for what someone told me was a standard.
Hmm. Yeah, you've mentioned a couple of times, and it makes me want to inquire how you came to this view that I really think is important about different solutions for different people. So I want to dig into that a little bit, because you talked earlier about the fact that you can't have a cookie cutter approach. We have so many things that are just cookie cutters that
Mhm.
it's like a fast food restaurant. You go and you get the same hamburger. It's got 2 pickles and it's got a piece of cheese or whatever, and everybody gets the same thing. So are you trying to convince us that that doesn't work for mental health?
It doesn't. There's no
Mm,
convincing.
mm.
If it did, you wouldn't have an increase in anxiety and an increase in depression.
Oh.
So it doesn't work. And that's the if my depression looks like yours, we have a problem. And
Hmm.
that's it. And I think that that's because Aaron Beck said that this looks like this. Because you're the father of this. No, it doesn't. My depression doesn't look. I'm not. I don't look like you.
Hmm.
So my depression is not going to look like yours.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
your approach to my depression should not be the same. And I think that's what some people we get confused on. Your treatment modality or your therapeutic treatment modality is not what I feel is best for you. It's what you feel is best for you.
Say that
Okay.
again.
So that's the component that we forget. I can tell you what's needed, but it's not my place. My place is to guide you to understand what's needed and what's best for you. I'm only with you an hour here or there. You're with yourself all day, every day. I need for
Mm,
you to identify what works best for you. So if you're going through an anxiety attack, first of all, I want to teach you how to recognize it, because your anxiety attack doesn't look like mine. So when you recognize that, do I want you to carry around a brown paper bag all day, every day? If that's your coping tool, then yes.
hmm.
But if it's not your coping tool and your coping tool is to walk away from what's causing you anxiety, then that's what I need you to do. But I need you to figure that out. I want to be the guide. I'm just the gas in the car, you the car.
Hmm.
That's all.
Wow. So does that perspective come more from what you've experienced as a person, from what you've learned through your research, combination of both? I mean, how do you, because that, again, I find it refreshing, as a matter of fact, but I it's not been my personal experience to see people, particularly with letters behind their name, who are free enough to be able to take these to look at these situations the way you just described them.
It's definitely a combination of both, especially when you deal with different cultures and serving different cultures. People don't have the same stressors. Whereas a group of individuals may be able to take, ramen noodles and make a casserole, another group of individuals might look at this packet and be like, nope, that's too high in sodium.
Hmm.
So so in other words, it's like, I can't, what works best for you, that whole lemon to lemonade thing is not going to work best for everybody. So we just have to figure out, first of all, identify what it is that I feel, identify what it is that I feel, and how can I improve upon that. But it's definitely not going to be the same.
Hmm.
And so when someone says, hey, Tara, we need to do it like this, my next question is why? Who said that? And why did you believe that? So like, that's the whole component. Like, just because you say it doesn't mean it doesn't make it true, but it does make it a researchable project that I can have, because I'm not going to just take what you're saying and think, oh yeah, you're right.
Hmm. Well, well. So I'd imagine that in your practice, you get folks, uh, probably two sides. And I want you to talk a little bit about both. I'd imagine you, and again, this is just my perception, you get folks as individuals who come in and say, oh, work's stressing me out, or I'm having some issues at work. But do you also get employers who recognize that there's an environment that they need to address? And how do you, I assume you treat them slightly different. So talk a little bit about both of those situations where you get the person or you get the group.
Well, from the employer aspect, let's go to the employee aspect. The employee aspect from that is, I want time off. I need a break, and I need it right now.
Mhm.
And so the next thing is that we have to deal with that. We do have to go into giving you the time off, because we understand that if you stay in this environment, it becomes poison to you. And so you have to go ahead and handle the immediate resolve. Now, from the employer aspect, a lot of times the challenge is that you see the individual who wants to impact the environment, but they don't necessarily know how to impact the environment, because I don't want to ask an employee how I can benefit my company, because it's not yours.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the challenges, is understanding that you cannot be so small in your mindset that you don't recognize that there's an opportunity for change and improvement. So, in other words, like you mentioned earlier, if I go to McDonald's, or if I go to Burger, if I go to any place that sells not because I don't want to give them accolades, if I go to any place that sells fast food, they've created the same type of regimen. Well, again, why? Why are we creating the same regimen instead of asking? So at some point, somebody had to say, well, you don't want your burger fried, you want your burger plain boiled, flame
Hmm.
broiled. Like, we had to ask the question. But when we ask those questions, we need to know what questions to ask and how to implement that change. I don't want to ask you a question on how I can improve, and I waste my time and waste yours. I have to be interested in making a change. So that's the difference. And I also, if I'm a real true employer, also have to be interested in understanding what your needs are, how to enforce change. And then based on what changes I need to enforce, it actually creates greater outcome and productivity for me, because I'm giving you that extra day off.
Hmm. Hmm.
So just a thought.
So you said that, at least it's been your experience, that people present with work-related issues, and generally it starts with, I just need time off.
Yes.
And I assume that some get it and some do not. Have you seen some circumstances where that need for for time off has resulted in a really significant turnaround once give us some, of course, no names in specific circumstances, but can you talk about some situations where people have come with that simple request and there's been this big turnaround after a period of time because they got the time off that they needed?
Oh, absolutely. Um, l- a good example of that would be COVID. When people were forced to be in the house with families, and I'm not saying that this was a positive thing for everybody, but when people were forced to be in the house with families and they realized, like, wait a minute, I've been missing family quality time. That was a turnaround for a lot of people, because we miss kids being kids. We miss playing games or maybe cooking out or cooking in the house. So those are some things like people didn't even understand. Some people didn't even realize that they like gardening or hobby. They didn't even realize what a hobby was because they weren't partaking in hobbies. But when they get the time off, they get an opportunity to reset. And so that's really what it is. So you're asking for time off because you feel overwhelmed, but what you're really asking for is an opportunity to reset. And a 2-week vacation is not enough time to reset, even though you work all year long to be granted your 2 weeks of vacation, but that's not enough time to reset because then I need a vacation after the vacation. So that's why people are requesting time off because it's like, I need a break and I don't care if I get a break and don't get paid.
Hmm.
Because at this point, I'm starting to understand the value of my mind. At this point, I'm understanding the value of the family that I've been blessed to have. So that's why they're asking for time off and don't care if they get paid. They don't care if they get half a check or no check at all. Now, from an employer perspective, it will behoove me to identify what your needs are because I'm really spending way more money giving you time off and your off time and all that other good stuff. But if I admit that to you, then I don't feel like I'm a great employer.
Mm, mm,
So, but we have a lot of those situations where employers go above and beyond working 2 and 3 different, even with the employers, you're working 2 or 3 positions.
mm,
So
mm,
you really need time off too.
mm, mm.
But okay, that's a whole nother story. Okay.
So, have again, either post COVID or before, are you having conversations? Are you running into employers who are starting to recognize this before the time off, or is it generally, the problem pops up and then they try to figure out what it is?
It's definitely the problem.
Oh, sure.
Because the thing about it is that when you as I provide services to employers, an employer wants to feel that everybody works 2 and 3 jobs the way they do. So I oftentimes can't see that you're overwhelmed because I'm on my 3rd job of the day.
Mm.
Whereas I'm thinking you shouldn't be overwhelmed because you just have 1 job to do. I have 3.
Mm.
So unfortunately, the ability to understand that, yeah, it's not pre-problem, it's post. It's post. I mean, that's just it
Oh,
because an employer feels like that particular person should be able to do 2 and 3 different things. You're not paying them for 2 and 3 different things.
sure, sure. Wow. So you are in a private practice. I think it's that you and some other partners, at least as I understand it.
Mhm.
So, why not one of the big conglomerates? Who've why not? Why not one of those? What's the difference, and why have you chosen to approach your work in the way that you do?
Honestly, when you collaborate with larger entities, not that there's anything wrong with that. Sometimes you have to conform to their way of thinking. And especially like you mentioned, we're in Atlanta, a metro Atlanta community, and a lot of and Atlanta has a lot of diversity. So if I conform to your way of thinking, I'm not I'm not very impactful. I'm not I'm not setting the standard. I'm conforming to a standard. So how do I provide a non-cookie cutter approach when I'm giving cookie cutter standards that I have to comply with?
Mhm.
So that wasn't going to work well for me. I'll say,
Uh, yeah, that's important. That's important.
yeah.
That's really important. Yeah, it's interesting. We're as a country having these big discussions about diversity, equity, inclusion, uh, all that type of thing, until people actually are different. And so it's interesting to talk about. It's more difficult sometimes to be about and to actually, have systems that recognize, again, as you've continued to repeat, that people are different and they're going to need different prescriptions and solutions to the challenges that they have. So, yeah, so I I want to guess that I guess I shouldn't guess. Was this easy to kind of be this, this independent and focused and all that type of thing? Was that easy for you, or um, so share a little bit about, some of the challenges of wanting to be that or being that type of a provider.
It wasn't easy. Because number one, when you're younger and you come out of college, you're thinking that you're trying to change. Your goal is to change the world. I mean, that's just what you think. You're thinking, I'm going to come out, I'm going to wow people, and I'm going to change the world. Not thinking that people are set in their ways. Not thinking that sometimes people don't want to change because they're comfortable where they are. And comfort can sometimes create a limited lifeline. So when we talk about just those dynamics, it wasn't easy because when you come in, when you're new to something and you're wanting to fit in, sometimes if I conform, I can get clients. If I can conform, I'll be able to actually pay my bills this month. But no, because sometimes you have to recognize your worth, and sometimes you have to recognize that I have a calling to fulfill. And because I have that calling to fulfill, I'm not going to compromise it. So I need to bring you where I am, not me jump down to where you. If I come down to where you are, it's to literally carry you on my back. But I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to conform.
So, you also shared a little bit. I think we talked very briefly about the fact that you also, in addition to your private practice, you also have a nonprofit cause that you're interested in. So share a little bit about that. There's the part that that is the business that takes care of the professional desire to make a difference there, to pay the bills and such. So what's the nonprofit about?
So the nonprofit is actually Choose You 365. Okay. So what that means is sometimes we think that I cannot be selfish. And I'm like, no, being selfish is sometimes self-full. And, even from childhood, adolescent years, I'm sure you can recall your parents saying, oh, no, you have to share. Make sure you share first. Did your friend get that first? Serve yourself last. No, if I serve myself, I keep putting myself last, I'm not going to have anything left for me. So it's okay to share. It's okay to make sure that people get their fair share, but it's also okay to make sure that I get my fair share. Because what happens is that if I keep giving you everything that I have first, then pretty soon I'm not going to recognize that I have nothing for myself. Or if I keep offering you everything and I'm totally depleted, then where does that leave me? So I like to give the example of an ATM. Everybody's pretty much gone to an ATM. If by chance a person comes around and they need $20 and you keep shelling out $20 and $20 and $20, eventually you have no more money left. The person who's always trying to receive, their need doesn't change. The only thing that will change at that point is where their need will be met. So if no one ever takes the time to replenish themselves, or no one ever takes the time to say, you know what, I need a break. I'm going to take some me time. I'm going to choose myself first every day. Then guess what? If I don't have anything left, you're not going to have anything to get. But what you will do is you go to the next ATM and make sure you get it. Whereas I'm high, dry, and empty and depleted. So that's the concept of Choose You 365. Understand that there is self-fullness in being selfish. So it's not selfish, it's self-full. I need to be full of myself every day in order to give you what you need.
Wow. That really conforms or connects to something that I heard, a year or two ago, that we can only help others out of our abundance. We can't give people something that we don't have. And that includes, I can't help can't give other people money if I'm broke. I can't help people be physically healthy if I'm sick all the time. It's very difficult to be able to help people with their emotions if mine aren't in check. So, so from that perspective, what are some of the things that you do to keep you going? Because so again, I understand you see individuals and families and people, probably all kinds of things going on. What do you do to keep you plugged in and keep you charged up? In addition to not to the business and the nonprofit, what do you do to keep yourself recharged?
I unplug. Real simple. Like you said, what do I keep myself to be charged? I unplug. And I think that's one thing that people have to understand is that I don't do a lot of social media. Because my thing is, when you do a lot of social media, I'm looking at the lies that you're telling me that you want me to see. So I don't always want to see that. And I have an option to not look at it. So I have to unplug. Another thing that I do is I take, like, beforehand, I wouldn't take the time to feel the breeze. But now the wind is blowing right now outside, and I will be outside shortly to feel it. I embrace taking the quiet moments because I understand that it's in those quiet moments that I'm able to actually find the answers to those unresolved questions. And so one of the things that I was telling someone is that sometimes we have some of our prayers. One of my prayers in particular is that, Lord, please allow me to hear you when you speak. What you don't think about is, like, when you think about the prayer, you think about, oh man, I'm gonna be able to hear God when he speaks. He's gonna speak louder. He's gonna speak with more clarity. I'm gonna have a better ear to hear. But the reality of it is that it's not that he's going to speak louder because you can't hear. What he's going to do is start to quiet the noise so that you can hear his whisper. So in quieting the noise, that means the social media is out. That means the people who you thought were your friends may not be there tomorrow. That means that in order for me to hear him, I have to understand that I have to take those quiet moments and I have to unplug in order to recharge. And that's how it goes. It's like solar power. The meter doesn't stop running, but eventually I have to reach a certain level of capacity in order to get a bill, to get a return for my investment. So I'm still plugged in to what I need to be plugged into, but I have to disengage from what's not serving me.
Sure, sure. Wow. Okay. So that interesting thought. Charging up means unplugging, and that
Mhm.
actually you're able to build up. I mentioned this a little bit earlier that there is a lot of focus, particularly in workplaces, and that's most of the conversations I have are around workplaces because we spend so much of our life either at work, think about work, around work, trying to get better work, trying to get better paid, so on and so forth. Um, so could you talk a little bit about how these emotional kinds of things that go on, particularly if not addressed, actually can have you uh, referring people for physical problems?
That's interesting because people don't understand is that if I don't check into with myself mentally, my body will. So I know you've heard those, you've heard those sayings, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Hmm.
Well, you're gonna get there a lot quicker. Okay. Let me just be very clear. Sleep is your body's opportunity to recharge itself. That's your unplugging moment. And if I grind all day long mentally and all of those good things, and I don't take an opportunity to really do a check-in, because your body and your mind go hand in hand. Your mind can keep going. When does your mind shut off? Even when you go to sleep, sometimes you
Mm,
dream. And
mm,
I'm sure, like, if you're like me, I keep a book and a pen by my bed, on my bed, as a matter of
mm,
fact, just
mm.
in case I have an idea, because I want to write it down versus trying to turn a light on and pick the phone up, because then I'm be up. But the thing about that is, your body will break down even when your mind doesn't. So if you don't recharge your mind, your body all of a sudden falls out. And I've seen it happen where people, I can't think of the name of it, but basically where limbs will stop performing. Nothing is wrong with them, but your limbs will stop moving and you'll feel like you can't walk. There's no reason as to why you cannot walk other than the fact that you're under so much stress that your body stops moving. I've actually experienced that. um, High levels of stress at one point. All of a
Mm.
sudden, I wake up the next day and my arm doesn't work. Well, why? Because I didn't allow myself the opportunity to rest mentally and physically. So I actually had to go into rehabilitation and rehab therapy and everything because
Really?
my arm, absolutely, didn't know how to dress myself. I could not dress myself to a certain extent because my arm muscles literally stopped moving, and that happened because my mind didn't stop. And as a result, my body had to go where my mind told it to go. But at some point, my body was like, you know what? I ain't moving no more. She needs a break.
Right.
And it took a break. And when they took
Wow.
that break, I had to go to physical therapy to get it back into play.
Mm, mm.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah. So when we're having these discussions, my research around psychosocial hazard mitigation came up with this definition of a psychosocial hazard, which is a psychosocial factor which is perceived or experienced by the person as a threat, and that in turn affects their behavior. And what you've just helped me think about is that threat affects behavior sometimes in a physical way because it's not going to let you continue to do the thing that you kept doing because it's damaging you. So
Mhm.
the the mind says, "Hey, this isn't good. This isn't good," and the body says, "I agree. We need to just stop." And you know, your autonomic systems want to continue to do it, but something takes over and says, "Look, we have to stop this thing." And unfortunately, that ends up with some people even, having very, very serious kinds of physical challenges
Mhm.
that cause them, to end up in therapy or to end up with lifelong problems that could have been addressed. And that's, I think that's the part that's so important is that people take the time to pay attention to what they're feeling. So there are folks who see their dentist regular, they see their primary care physician regular, and sometimes forget to see their mental health practitioner or therapist regular. So what advice would you have for people about, that regimen that you should have in terms of keeping your mental health where it needs to be?
I feel like we need to understand that mental health is just as important as physical health. And when they say you are what you eat, it's the same way with your mind. You are what you think. So
Mm,
you've got to take the time to understand the importance of your mind, just like you taken it. Over the past 5 years, people have not been afraid to talk about their mental health. They've also not been afraid to go get bodies done. So I'm like, if you'll spend thousands of dollars on your body, would you not want to spend a few of those dollars on your mental health? Because the thing about it is, when your body changes, your mind shifts,
hmm,
whether it's for the health or not so much for the health. If I have an unhealthy body, sometimes I have an unhealthy mindset. If I have a healthy body, I may want to get a healthy mindset. Either way it goes, I've got to invest in the outcome of what I want. So if I want a strong mind, I have to exercise. Your mind is a muscle. So you can't you your mind your mind is a muscle. It's up to you whether or not you exercise it. If you want a strong mind and you want a healthy, strong mental muscle, exercise it. Read, do your research, write a gratitude journal. Get up in the morning and understand the concept of what is needed to be successful mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every aspect. How am I going to achieve these things? So, in order for me to achieve it, sometimes I can't get there by myself. If someone said, "Hey, Tara, girl, go outside and run a mile," with your help, with your support, I can run a mile. But see, a lot of times I don't know how you've seen it, but a lot of times you can run a mile a lot better when you have someone in your corner that's pushing you forward. That's all we are. We're mental trainers. You see what I'm saying? Like, yes, we're mental health profession. Yes, we're licensed to do this, but I'm like, that's what we are. We are the cheerleaders on the side saying, who told you you couldn't do it? Who told you you couldn't soar? Who told you you couldn't fly? Because if that's what your mind told you, then it's time for us to rearrange some things.
mm,
Who to,
mm.
who told you you can cook?
Huh, right.
So, I mean, but sometimes we get a lot further when we have someone that we know will support us with an unconditional regard towards success. So that's
Mm.
that's 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 that. Long answer.
No, no, actually, that's quite fine. How do you make the transition? I understand there's a difference, and you can certainly clarify it if I don't have it right, but I understand that there's a difference between a uh, a counselor or a therapist and a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
And so I'd imagine you've had lots of cases where, the journey you're trying to take folks on, it does have a need for something else. So what are some of the things you consider before you refer people on to something a little bit more intense than what you do?
There are some okay, so let's say, for example, we'll use anxiety because anxiety is a very common diagnosis these days. Sometimes you can control anxiety with different coping tools. So my coping tool may be to run or to cook or to garden or whatever it is. But then there are times where I cannot control those panic attacks. There are times that the I can't control what I'm feeling because there is an imbalance. If there is a chemical imbalance and we've reached a stage where we have to examine other things, then that's when I would recommend it. And of course, you don't have to do it. Let's just look into it. If it helps, it helps. If you feel like it makes you feel funny, don't worry about it. Because if you have a coping tool of deep breathing and it works for you, let's move forward. Because there are going to be times where you may have a panic attack out of the blue and you're in the middle of 15 people and you cannot say, let me go 1 second, let me go. No, I'm going to have to take these 15 deep breaths. I'm going to have to remove myself mentally from these 15 people around me. But those are things that we have to learn over time. How I can be in a place that's surrounded by people and not be in the midst of the place where I'm surrounded by people. So those are different skill sets that you learn from a licensed clinician.
Mm.
Where if I'm going for just a counselor, you can have a counselor that's non-licensed. To me, they're more like a life coach.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
those individuals be people who work on skill sets. So I may work on simply the skill, like I may not explore a process. My focus for you may only be to help you identify this. Like, for example, the runner, I'm going to run with you. And there are different times where your licensed clinician has to be that person who runs with you, and it's fine. But then there are other times where, hey, you got the person helping you with the skills, you got the person helping you with the processing, and then now we're going to have to look at balancing this all.
Mm.
If you've done those two steps and you still have problems with balancing, let's consider.
Mm.
We can consider balancing, or we can just work harder. Because again, the brain is a muscle.
Mm. Mm.
Depends on how much time you want to devote towards your success.
Mm. Mm. That's such an interesting focus you have on having the person really design their whatever, design the solution to their challenge and be there for them as opposed to designing it for them.
Mhm.
Because that, again, that just seems to be common. There are a lot of folks out there, "Oh, come down and we'll fix it for you." And
No, I don't want to work that hard. That's for you.
right.
If I do it and if I do it and it's a success, oh, I got a best counselor in the world. If I say do it and it fails,
Right. Right.
I'm just
Right.
gonna ask the questions. That's all I'm here to do is ask the right questions.
Right. 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 So if in our, we have a few more moments here. Again, a lot of the focus of this podcast is on helping people, particularly here in the United States. We focus here in the US. I get folks on from other countries sometimes, but I do believe what the good book says, that charity begins at home and then it spreads abroad. So if you have a group of people who are listening and they're really interested in uh, being in a safer mental and emotional space at work, what are some suggestions that you would give to them about creating a safer space at work mentally and emotionally?
One of the things that I would suggest is for individuals to learn how to take those incremental breaks. So sometimes we feel like we have to plow through and forge through and get this task done, and I got to do it. I have to. You don't. You really don't. If you were a smoker, you would take your allocated 15 minutes anytime you needed a smoke break. Okay. So if I'm an individual who's focused on having good mental health in a safe workspace, I may have to take that break. That means, Every 2 hours, I may have to get up and go walk around the building. Every 2 hours, I may have to get up and go get me some tea or coffee or whatever it is my preference may be. But just like the person who's addicted to nicotine will take the opportunity to quench that need, I need you to also be addicted to good mental health and a safe work environment, and to take that opportunity to invest in yourself in that manner. So you get 15 minutes every whatever amount of hours, and I need the same amount of time.
Hmm. Hmm. That actually is not very simple, not complicated either.
I don't like to complicate things. I like they say kiss it, keep it simple.
Right.
I learned that rule early. Oh, I can
Right.
keep it simple.
Right.
Okay.
So, if there are folks, so I assume that you are, have plenty of folks that you can provide help for. But if there are folks out there who are interested and want to learn more from you about your practice, about your nonprofit, about some of the things you're involved in, how would they get a hold of you?
Please, the best way is email or log onto the website. Nonprofit is chooseu365.org, and that's CHOOSEU, the letter U, 365.org. From there, you can contact me, or email address chooseu365@gmail.com, or
Hmm,
at the, so it's, those are the best ways to get in contact with me personally.
sure.
Of course, we have the office, integrated concepts for families.org. You can contact me there. We have a handy dandy phone that everything goes to. So I'm available. But the one thing that I want an individual to get for themselves is you also can be available for you.
Hmm,
If I'm in a work environment that doesn't value my safety, I'm my own advocate.
hmm,
And that's the one thing that people tend to forget about, is that you are your own advocate. But even more than that, you have no idea how valuable you are to the company that you work for. When a lot of people don't even want to work any longer,
hmm.
like, you have no idea how valuable you are. So be your own advocate in your own space. Don't think that oh, if I do this, I can get fired. In Georgia, we are a right to work state. But my thing is, hmm, just like they have you, again, you have the right to work. They have that. They Employers have their own rights as well, but you have yours, and don't forget that. Okay,
Hmm.
that's okay. That's it.
Well, that's wonderful. It's good to be able to spend some time listening to a professional. I I whenever I have conversations about psychological health and safety, as I said, it is important to have the safety conversation, but to have a conversation about the psychological stuff. And it is important to have folks who understand this. And what I like so much about the way that you've discussed this topic is you try to keep it very relatable to the average person.
Mhm.
Because again, I suspect that there's a connection between keeping it simple and having it actually work.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
there's a lot of really complicated 12-step this and 15-step that, and read these 12 books and blah 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 blah. But some of these solutions are actually much simpler. They don't require all of that, and you end up wearing yourself out trying to get better, as opposed to just taking the just really simple approach: unplug to charge up.
Yes. I mean,
That
you are the specialist of your life.
mm,
So if you are the specialist of your life, I can only add value to it.
mm,
Like, you are the professional. So, and that's what people tend to forget. There's nothing that I can bring to the table when you are the table. So eh, what else can I do? So, like you said, unplug to recharge. Understand your value. Understand that when it comes down to goals, set realistic goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time specific. Like, I don't have to like, oh, I'm going to accomplish like exercising 100 minutes every day. Not unless I'm walking up Stone Mountain every day,
mm,
and it takes me 100 minutes to get there, up and back.
mm.
But I'm like, set goals that are realistic. Today I do 5 minutes. Tomorrow I do 6 minutes.
Mm,
Next week I may be up to 10 minutes.
mm,
But if I say today I do 5 and by the end of the week I'm at 30, I quit.
mm, mm.
So again, give yourself grace. Give yourself the opportunity to demonstrate where your gratitude is. Like, do affirmations. Like I said, like when they say you are what you eat, you are who you think you are. Like, so as a man thinketh, so is he.
Mm.
So if I think myself to be great, would I be great or would I be not so great?
Mm. Well, there we go. There we go. Lots and lots of tidbits for folks to take, to use as they see fit. Again, thanks, Dr. Tara Miller, for spending some time with us. I hope folks will just take some time and just kind of process some of this, because while it's so simple, I think some of this folks are going to have to canoodle on just for a while and go like, wow, that actually was, because I think sometimes we want to make it more complicated than it is. So again, thanks very much for being our guest on this episode. Again, those who are watching or listening, you can catch up on any of our latest episodes. You can go back and replay this one as many times as you like. psychealthandsafetyusa.com. You can go to the website. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. We are somewhat active on social media, just to be able to give people an opportunity to plug into what we're doing, to listen to some of the things that are happening. Again, it is our hope that these conversations will help people recognize that psychological health and safety is as important as physical health and safety. And we'd like to be your coach along the way and help you get there with conversations like this. So again, thanks very much. And until our next episode, we will see you then. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Daniels. Have a great one.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. To stay up to date with the best content on workplace mental health in America, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and join the Flourish DX community at www.flourishdx.com.